think that the biggest misunderstanding in getting into it is just, the amount of time and the amount of money it takes to launch a brand.
And I want a good show, damn it. Ready for a good show?
Doing awesome, yeah. I'm excited to talk to you, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I've always been doing big into archery, and my dad said, "Hey, you guys want to start an archery store?"
Yes, that's how it was.
Andrew, yes, of course, let's do this together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. I'm your host, Andrew Maff, and today I'm joined by the amazing Chris Gallant, who is the CEO of Chamberlain Coffee. Chris, how you doing, man? You ready for a good show? Awesome start.
I am.
This.
Let's do it.
Beautiful. Super excited to have you on the show. I'm a big coffee fan. I also know your background is nuts, so I do want to get into that as well. So obviously I always like to let you do the honors of that. Started off the stereotypical way. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you were at. We'll get into Chamberlain Coffee next.
Yeah. My background is beverages. I love drinks. And so I've been in the beverage world since about 2009. I've worked for some large companies like Heineken and Red Bull and strategy and M&A teams. Started a brewery in New York and sold it. Worked in Kombucha for a while, and now I'm here. So, I've been in beverages for most of my career, whether consulting for them or working for them or leading them. So, having a lot of fun now selling coffee.
So, beverages in all of the CPG space, food and beverages are a pain. Like, they can be really tough to get going. And you've now worked with, as you mentioned, I know it was Heineken, Red Bull, you had the brewery, Kombucha. Yeah. Now you've gotten into coffee, which is a very different direction out of those. But what kind of got you into the industry in the first place?
Yeah, I wish I knew how hard it was before I chose this path. It's difficult, it's competitive, and it's very expensive. But what got me into it? Let's see. I was consulting for a large consulting firm in the U.S., had an opportunity to go work for a beverage company, traveling around the Caribbean, helping them assess their operations in different islands. So I jumped on the opportunity to do that project, fell in love, and took it up from there.
Wow. So obviously you alluded to, and as I did as well, the beverage space is just, it's very difficult. There's a ton of beverages that are launched all the time and then fail all the time. You've obviously had experience in a lot of different name brand beverages, and Chamberlain Coffee is obviously growing like a weed right now. So what do you see as the big mistake that a lot of these different beverage companies make when they first go to launch?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, there's so many mistakes to be made, and I've made most of them myself. I mean, there's, I think, understanding what it takes to build the company sort of overall is the hardest thing, right? So it takes time, and it takes a lot of investment up front. Even if you are co-packing or making it with another manufacturer, it takes investment to develop a product, to buy all the inventory, the raw materials, to hold that inventory, and then to get it on shelf, right? It costs money to get a product on shelf, and it costs money to get the product to come off shelf, right? Especially if you're a new brand without brand awareness, you've just got to invest so much behind trade spend. And if we're talking about retail, you got to invest a lot of money behind promos to get people to sample your product. Because if you're just a new product on shelf and no one's heard of you, no one's going to take you, maybe unless you're on deal or unless you're visible with an off-shelf display so they can try you. And then they'll come back and keep buying you if you're great. But you've got to get that first purchase. And if you're talking about e-com, again, you've got to spend money behind paid media. You've got to spend money behind building a social presence to get people to be aware of you. So I think that the biggest misunderstanding in getting into it is just the amount of time and the amount of money it takes to launch a brand.
Let's talk about the e-com side for a second, because that side's always
Yeah.
very interesting. We've worked with a ton of beverage brands that, they're coming straight out the gate. They want to get started and get things moving. And I know that the difficulty, especially with anything in CPG, is just you've got to get someone to try something. But for beverage,
Mhm.
it's so expensive to ship because you've got to,
Right.
basically sell them at least like a 12 pack or something like that to actually get them to make that purchase. So, what do you do in the beginning stages to get people to actually try things over the internet before they actually commit to a larger order? Or are you solely
Yeah.
relying on the promos in store?
Great question. We actually didn't come out with a beverage until 3 years into the business. So we started out with coffee, so dry coffee, bags of coffee or tins
Yeah.
of matcha, and we still don't sell beverages online for just that reason. I think it's really, you're right. You've got to, when you're selling beverages, you've got to sell a multi pack, preferably at least a 12 pack, to make the economics work. Now the challenge with that is you're asking people to spend $30 to $40, maybe more, uh, and that's a high ring for somebody to sample something. For someone who's never tried something, $30 to $40 potentially plus shipping is a lot of money to spend if you've never tried or have even heard of a brand.
Yeah.
And so now that we do have the brand awareness, we're going to be bringing some of our beverages online. But it's taken us. We launched beverages a little over a year ago. It's taken us a year to get there.
Yeah. Now, so for the coffee side specifically, I know it can be a little bit different, right? But the coffee side is so wildly competitive. Everyone and their mother likes to just
Mm-hmm.
go find beans and slap a label on it and then say that they have their own
Right.
coffee brand. And
Right.
that is a nightmare scenario because it's just another Me Too product. Coffee, I understand a little bit different because the economics of it still line up. The shipping doesn't have to be as crazy as if you were selling a 12 pack or something. But still, it's that beginning, like, how do you get people to actually try the coffee? Did you start off with like smaller, like samplers that were just like a, kind of free plus shipping kind of thing? Or what was that initial approach?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have a head start because my partner has such a loud voice online, right? She started as a YouTuber, has an amazing podcast, so we had a bit of a head start to make people aware of our brand and get them to sample it. Um, but you're right; it's hard to get people to try things, and so you want to balance out having a product that is at a low enough cost, per unit, price per unit, so that people are willing to say, "Oh, I can try this for $10 or $20," but that's also enough to cover your economics over time,
Yeah.
right? And so that's one of the great things about coffee is it comes in at that price point. We charge about $16 a bag, and so that's not a big ring for consumers to try a new product. Now, shipping out a bag of coffee, that's if we're just shipping one bag, right? Those economics don't work, and so we have to
Yeah.
try to get them through incentives or through bundles or through through add-ons, to, instead of buying a bag of coffee a month, buy a bag of coffee and a mug and a tin of matcha, and then 2 months later come back and buy something else.
Yeah. So you brought up your partner, which I did want to ask you about. So Emma Chamberlain, obviously the namesake of the brand. One thing I've noticed about your brand specifically, when I've seen a lot of brands that have an influencer tied to them, and most of the time the influencer's face is like stapled all over the website, and you guys
Mm-hmm.
went in a different direction with that. I think from what I was able to find, Emma's only referenced like in a couple sentences, like in your about section kind of thing. So what was the thought process around leveraging her influence but not catering to it with the brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. Obviously, the brand is her namesake, so it's intimately tied to her brand as well.
Yeah.
But what we see is a lot of creators, a lot of celebrities promoting brands a little bit too much. Maybe not a little bit, a lot too much. And
Yeah.
I think that leads to this inauthenticity that over time consumers won't believe them as much as they're promoting things. Won't believe that celebrity A really does believe in this product that he or she uh, probably doesn't use, right?
Yeah.
And so we really want the brand to feel authentic to Emma, because ultimately she isn't just the face of our brand; she's the founder of our brand. She's a board member. She's one of the key day-to-day players in it, right? And so we take a pretty deliberate role with her about how much should we promote this? It probably shouldn't be every day, maybe not even every week. Now, on our own page, we're promoting the heck out of it, but for her, we want to make sure it still feels authentic to consumers.
Yeah. And kind of to that point, like I know like influencers, their reach can only get you so far. And then at a certain point, you kind of hit a wall of, okay, we've either more or less gotten to all of the people that you have an influence on, or, we're just kind of hitting a wall with who we can contact. So in your scenario, in terms of marketing outside of leveraging her brand, what has that been like? I know there's a lot going on an e-commerce, like online perspective. I know you're also leaning heavier into the retail side of things. So like, what's that whole approach been?
Yeah, I think any celebrity can get you that first look, right? Or their first sample. People will go try it. But beyond that, you've got to get those people coming back, you've got to have a great product to have them keep coming back to buy your product again. If you look at, our sales on e-com every day, a big chunk of it is returning consumers, the people coming back to buy again and again. I think the other thing is, celebrities don't reach every person in the US. And so you've got to create a brand that can stand on its own as well. And so we try to create a fun, unique, different brand or their own brand voice that speaks to consumers. So if you go down the coffee aisle at retail, right, you'll see lots of brown and drab colors, and you see our bright pink and purple packaging, and it's something else. It's sort of jumping out to consumers. So that's part of it, is creating its own brand, and part of it is, we've got to do all the nuts and bolts that any brand that doesn't have a celebrity on it, right? Yeah. So we've got to spend money on paid media. Right. We've got to work with micro influencers. At retail, we have to do price promotions to get people that have never heard of us or Emma to try the product. We've got to do, shelf talkers, put up big cardboard stands. So we've got to do it all as well.
Yeah. Are you kind of, because to your point, most of e-commerce seems to be from returning customers. So are you kind of using retail as like a customer acquisition channel and trying to get them to come back to e-com, or are you kind of doing a blend of the two?
I'd say it's actually the other way around, right? Because as you look at, and this is the hard part about e-commerce, right? On a gross margin basis, e-commerce is a much more profitable channel for us, right, than retail is. But if you start to look on a fully loaded contribution margin basis and start to look at the cost of acquiring consumers, the cost of shipping product, retail starts to become a much more profitable channel, and there's much more volume there. And so as we push more into retail, we start to look at e-commerce as something special for our consumers. So a point we can interact with them, a point we can talk with the consumers that really want to engage with our brand, and a discovery tool, right? And then retail is a real growth engine for our business.
Yeah. Interesting. So it's a very interesting way to look at that. So if you're looking at the e-commerce side as the customer acquisition channel, trying to kind of focus on, hey, we're available in retail. From your paid media perspective, are you keeping that focused in areas only where you're available in retail, or are you doing like a full nationwide and just check out your local store kind of thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're in a bunch of nationwide retailers, so we push it. I think, what's the stat? It's like 90-something% of America lives within 5 miles of a Walmart, right? And we're in all the Walmarts. So we really push it pretty nationwide. And we're starting to do a mix of ads, and we're starting to experiment with what does it look like as we maybe do an ad that's not focused on bringing somebody to our own D2C site, but directing that paid media to Instacart and one of our partners, right? Or maybe to Amazon, because a lot of people use Amazon as a replacement for the grocery store. So we're starting to experiment with what that looks like. That really messes with what our our ROAS and our CAC figures look like over time, because all of a sudden we're spending ads and directing people away from our site. Yeah. But I think ultimately it's healthy for the business.
And so, okay, so you're also available on Amazon?
We are, yes.
Interesting. Okay. So that brings up a great question. If you're adjusting paid media to potentially go to one of those channels where you can't measure attribution, and you also have a lot of people that there's bleed over and they're going to retail, how do you put together your target KPIs for things like paid media or any of your marketing initiatives from an e-commerce perspective, knowing that it's going to have an effect from an off uh, website perspective, as well as probably your Amazon or Instacart or Walmart, et cetera?
That's a great question. I was going to ask you the same thing. I mean, I think, I talk to a lot of other people, that are running brands that went from D2C into retail. And it's a pretty common thing, right? Especially for brands that started during COVID and had, such an uplift from the massive off trend uptick, right? Of e-commerce during COVID. But, taking their brand now to retail to really grow it, how do they measure that? Success. And I don't think anyone has found a great measure yet of saying like, okay, now I take 15% of my budget and I direct that towards retail. It's really hard to measure. You can start to try it by doing it on a geography basis. And I've got, X chain in the Pac Northwest, and I'll just, pump a bunch of paid media in the Pac Northwest to see if there's an uplift. And you can start to do some of that, but it's really hard to measure the impact of online digital media against offline sales.
It's always comforting to me when I ask that question to a business that's run like yours, and you're like, I don't know. I'm like, good, okay, just making sure that it's not just me. I do feel like
we're working on it. We're trying to figure it out, but it's really hard to measure. I mean, there's obviously we know there's some impact, right? Because we know that just functionally people see an ad online. That doesn't just mean they buy something online. It will impact their purchase behavior at the grocery store. And so you can try to look at an aggregate by geography, but that's kind of the only measure we've seen so far.
Yeah.
We can kind of see if it works.
Yeah, I've felt like as time has gone on, especially as attribution has gotten stripped away and things like that, like digital marketing is really becoming very similar to traditional marketing. Like you can't paint the picture of an ROI of a billboard. So like you're looking at marketing collectively. And my favorite example was actually, ironically, it was coffee. I was watching my wife shop. She got hit from an Instagram ad, clicked on the ad, went to their website, went from their website and searched to see if they were available on Amazon, thought they looked good, wanted to see if she could get a discount, went back to the website, forgot their name, so we had to Google them, clicked on their Google ad, went to the website and converted. And I was like, look, as a marketing standpoint, I hate you. Like I have no idea how to decide what worked there. And because that customer journey is so fluid now, it's like you can't really paint that picture as much as you want.
It's much harder. I mean, look, when I worked at Red Bull, we built, giant ice mountains in baseball parks and had downhill ice skating races. Like, how do you measure that cost against the success of the brand, right?
Well, you think and correct me if I'm wrong, but at a brand at that size, and I would imagine also at Heineken, it's really more of your focus. Your marketing initiatives are a little bit more focused on just eyeballs and not so much actual conversion, because you kind of assume X amount of eyeballs are pretty much guaranteed to get us X amount of sales, correct?
Yeah, at that measure, yes, right. You start to see what the impact is of building an ice mountain, right, in different types, in that specific geography, right, but then also, right, in terms of what media do you get out of that. And now you can kind of see, as you put that on social media, what happens and how many eyeballs do you get there.
Yeah.
But it's not quite as easy to see, I'm going to run a price promotion in, this chain in Central Ohio, and let's see what the lift is out of it.
Yeah. So I digress, going back to Chamberlain. How do you kind of position the brand? Like when you first started with Chamberlain, like did you figure out exactly how, like where the hole in the market was? Because like I had mentioned earlier, like coffee is a wildly competitive space. So how did you figure out like, okay, here's how we can really connect with an audience that seems to not have that representation right now?
Yeah, I look from a consumer and from a brand standpoint, a lot of it stemmed from Emma and her audience, right? And her method of communicating with fans and her voice. And so that worked really well for us. So that was an easy part to figure out. I think as far as products go, it was more trial and error, right? And so it was trying to understand how our consumers want to drink coffee, because it's not like I'm drinking it now, right? Sort of hot coffee, black in the morning, right? They want to drink it cold. They want to drink it, sweeter. They want to drink it at different occasions throughout the day in different formats. So, it took a lot of work for us to say, okay, this format works, this doesn't. This type of roast works, this doesn't. This flavor profile works, this doesn't. And so, part of it is listening to consumers and hearing what they say. sometimes what they say they want isn't always, what they'll actually buy. So part of it is trial and error. Part of it's looking at what other brands are doing, either in our category, adjacent categories. But it's really triangulating all those data points and seeing what works.
What about from like a retention perspective? Because like I said, coffee is just so competitive that it's always interesting to me to speak with someone that broke through that. But what do you do to keep them coming back? Obviously, the standard auto emails and stuff like that. But like how do you manage like reward programs or anything along those lines? Or do you even have those?
Yeah, we have a reward program with Super Affiliate, which I think works really well for us. We have a subscription program with free shipping, so those things work well. It was interesting what's happened to our subscription program as we launched on Amazon and as we launched at retail. So, as we launched in Amazon, we saw subscriptions slow down and we saw Amazon Subscribe and Save take off like crazy, which told us, hey, there's just a cohort of consumers that prefer to shop on Amazon. So we've got to be there and we've got to offer them products there. That's their preferred method of purchase. Similarly, we launched in retail. We saw some subscriptions slow down, and the feedback we got from consumers at the subscription surveys at the end, if they ended, is, hey, I can now buy you at my local Walmart or my local Target, and so I'm going to buy you there instead. Yeah. And so it made us really start to think about, is there something different we can offer on subscription? Is there a unique flavor? Is there something extra that those diehards that want it delivered to them by us should get or can't get?
Yeah. Yeah, when when we first started the E-Comm show, I had the founder of Bold Commerce, Jay Myers, on the show, and all we did was talk about the subscription side and the complications of getting a good subscription model in place it was just so eye-opening. It was a great episode. I completely agree. As soon as you kind of open up the Amazon wormhole, people prefer to subscribe and save there, and so it's a very clear lesson of diversification. Be everywhere that your customer is. Like in your point, you're on retail, you have your own website, you have Amazon, you have Walmart, Instacart, etc. So it really is a matter of just keep trucking along with what is working well, and then just let them shop wherever they're most comfortable.
Yeah, we pushed back against launching on Amazon for a long time.
Yeah.
And then once we did it, we wanted to put a little bit of effort behind it. It really took off. So again, they told us, hey, people want to buy there. And so, why fight it? If our consumer, the people that love us, want to buy in this manner, then let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, really appreciate it. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. It was great having you on the show. I appreciate your time. I would love to give you the opportunity here to let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, more about Chamberlain Coffee.
Great. ChamberlainCoffee.com or at Chamberlain Coffee on all social media.
Easy enough. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks again. Everyone who tuned in, of course, thank you as well. Please make sure you do the usual: rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff on whichever podcast platform you prefer, or head over to theecommshow.com to check out all of our previous episodes. But as usual, we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the E-Comm Show. Head over to ecomshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The E-Comm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of the E-Comm Show.